This live webinar will be recorded and made available in an accessible alternative format upon request. If you require captioning, transcription, or other communication services to access this webinar, please contact the Disability Resource Center, DRC, at the following address, drc@snhu.edu, or call 877-591-4723 and select option number 4. This video today is going to go over the final project part 2 paragraphs 1 through 3. So as you have completed the first round of your final project, this project is going to be informed by that first project. A lot of what you talk about here will be based on that, as well as your readings. So here is the template that you will pull up from your course room under coursework, the assignments and rubrics. You're going to prepare this in APA, requiring you to have a title page. Then this moves into the template and it tells you, okay, you're going to have an introduction, and we'll go over that in the next video. Paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 is what we're going to talk about. So in paragraph 1, it's telling you to use content from your submission in project 1 and your readings, and it gives you the specific chapters, to discuss the initial budget process. Then in paragraph 2, you're going to use content from your submission in the final project part 1 in your readings and discuss the budget variances and potential reasons for that. And then paragraph 3, we're going to then talk about changes you think the company should make based on those variances, and what will those changes accomplish. So now that we know what paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 want us to talk about, we need to review our rubric and to make sure that we are covering everything that we need to. So in the budget process, we need to make sure that we are discussing the initial budget process and the variances and the potential reasons. To get to exemplary, we want to make sure that we have potential business situations included. Our budget process changes. We want to determine what the changes are that the company should make. Of course, they are being informed by our variances. You need to identify what changes will be accomplished by making these changes. And then again, to get to exemplary, you're talking about the implications of making those changes. This ethical element, please make sure that you are including that in every process that you're talking about. This is where I have routinely deducted points in the past when grading these projects, because students will talk about these two elements and then they never talk about the ethical ramifications. So be clear in your transition from thought to thought too, so that we can clearly identify that you're talking about ethical considerations. Right? So back to our template. So in paragraph 1, let me tell you what we don't want to see. What I don't want to see is you telling me how you calculated the sales budget, how you calculated the production budget, and so on. What I want to know is, what is the initial budget process? Why do we do it? What does it inform us? How do we track it? So think outside the box for this one. Okay, I've seen some really good papers in the past that have really hit it home when they're talking about that initial budget process. If your book is vague and you're having a hard time with that, look for external sources. You can look for articles, other places where you have found information on budget process. But again, what we don't want to see there is that you're just telling us how you do each step. Okay, so then you're going to, in paragraph 2, you're going to talk about those variances that you briefly discussed in your paper 1 and the potential reasons behind those. Right? Again, that should be very similar to what you talked about in paper 1. Just bringing that information forward. Again, don't tell me how you calculated the budgets, or the variances. What I want to know here is, what were the variances? What are the potential reasons for them? What's the impact? And then in paragraph 3, we're talking about the changes. Based on those variances that you're talking about, what changes should be implemented? Again, you're always going to tie that back to those variances. So your changes need to be logical. They need to make sense as to why we are trying to solve that variance. Then, within that element too, you're going to talk about the ethical ramifications, or the ethical why you picked what you did, and what implications that's going to have on the morale. If we decide to lay off people and bring in more experienced workers, what's my ethical thought process behind that? And what can I look at that could become ethical issues in that decision? Okay, so again, we're looking at those ethical considerations as well. So you're going to then begin to form your paragraph 4. Okay. So I think what we'll do is we'll just skim through here. Instead of making 2 videos, I'll just talk about this. So in paragraph 4, you're going to discuss those ethical considerations for those changes. Again, being very explicit to that. Paragraph 5, you're going to decide whether to make or buy. And again, here's those ethical considerations, and what implications does this decision have? What will the impact to our efficiency be? Again, this is a hypothetical situation. You're not pulling numbers from anywhere. You're presenting a hypothetical situation. If we decided to buy this element of our production, what does that mean to me? What cost am I looking at? Remember those relevant costs, those irrelevant costs. What are my ethical implications? If I buy from somebody outside, then what happens internally? What happens to the community? What implications is each of these choices mean to us, right? If I make it in-house, what does it mean? If I buy it outside, what does it mean? When we look at make or buy, we have to look at a holistic approach. So you may say right off the bat, oh, I want to make it in-house. But don't forget, buying it, or outsourcing it may very well be better for our operations. We operate more efficient. If we have a bottleneck within our own manufacturing process that we can then buy from an external party within the community, we're freeing up that bottleneck and we're improving the efficiency of our operation. So don't think of buy as a negative connotation. A lot of places outsource things, and we create jobs by that as well. A lot of places outsource payroll because it's just not cost effective for the accountant to spend 5 to 10 hours a week or every other week preparing payroll, when we can outsource it and pay somebody $45 to complete the entire payroll process. So think about it in that aspect, and not that it's a negative thing, right? Think about the efficiencies. And again, tie it back to your variances. Think about those variances and how, if in our efficiency, were we efficient? Were we not efficient? How can we improve that by making or buying? Okay. All right, and then paragraph 6, the non-financial performance measures. You're looking at those measures in which we can hold our managers accountable for the information that they're putting together, and what can we do? Non-financial. A lot of times we discuss that, tying performance to monetary reward is bad. So, you need to be careful on here that you're putting non-financial performance measures in to connect all of these elements within your paper. Okay? You're going to explain the significance of each of those. Just don't put in there, like, you really need to elaborate in this paragraph. I've seen papers where it's just, here they are, boom, 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 and then they move on. But in this paragraph, you're prompted. It's telling you what are the pros and cons of each. What are your ethical considerations? And what is the significance of each of those? So you're not just plugging in non-financial performance measures, you're putting it in and you're thinking it through the whole way. If I implement this, what's my pros and cons, what's my ethical ramifications, and what's the significance of it? Okay, you really need to put some thought into this paper. Now, as for your introduction and your conclusion, you should all know by now that we absolutely write our introduction last. Because from your paper, you're taking pieces of it and you're going to put it back into your introduction. It should be about 3 to 4 sentences. Your last sentence should lead your readers into what your paper is going to talk about. Right? Your conclusion should be, again, 3 to 4 sentences. It should be sufficient and it should summarize all of the points that you've made throughout your paper. You also need a reference page, so make sure that if you're using external sources other than your book that you are documenting those on your reference page.